Before we start this video, you guys know how it goes. I'm going to try to pronounce names of some very kind people and probably not too good at it. But nonetheless, thank you Sam Kuttenkoller, Chucks Odzi, Adam Mays, Mathis Zillig, Roberto Pellinora, John Wayne McQuinta, John Palmer, Michael Clark, and thank you to this last person whose name I cannot pronounce because I do not understand the language. If somebody in the comments could tell me how to pronounce that, that would be glorious. Thank you guys. I hope you all enjoy the video. Alright guys, over on the character manager, let's jump right into this. So I'm going to make a public int. I'm going to call this pending critical damage. You can also do this on the player stats if you want, but then you have to call the player stats on the backstab attempt. Damage will be inflicted during an animation event, so I'm going to leave it as a comment here. And another comment I'm going to say, used in backstab or riposte animations. So let's save that. And then let's go over here to the weapon slot manager, and where we have the damage colliders, let's make those both public, because we're going to use those in this video and the other one in a future video. So let's save that. And then what we're going to want to do is we're going to go over here to the weapon item, and we're going to want to make a couple new ints. Right now we have the damage just raw on our damage collider. We're actually going to be able to assign the damage to our damage collider from our weapon, depending on what the weapon's damage is. So let's make a header and call this damage. And what we want to do is right now we're just going to work with two types. We're going to have public int base damage. You guys have like fire and lighting and magic and all that if you want. So right now I'm just going to have base for now, and we're going to have public int critical damage multiplier. So this will be the multiplication effect that the damage has when you're doing a critical attack like a backstab or a riposte. So let's actually initialize that. Say we're just going to say 4 for now. You guys can work out your own damage formulas because I'm sure everyone's will be a little bit different. And for base damage, I'm just going to say 25 because I believe that's what we used on the damage collider. Now, over on the load weapon left damage collider and right damage collider, we're going to say left hand damage collider dot current weapon damage equals player inventory. Oh, we don't have that called, so let's actually go up there and call that now on the top of the weapon slot manager. Right below player manager, I'm just going to say player inventory. Then we're going to call that on the awake. Right below player manager, player inventory equals get component and parent because this is seated on the game object below the player inventory script. Okay, let's save that and go down here now back to the load left weapon damage collider. We're going to say player inventory dot left weapon dot base damage. And that means when you actually load the weapons in your hand, the damage colliders will get their damage from whatever the weapon's base damage is. So now, depending on your weapon, the damage collider damage will change, which is what we want ideally. Okay, now, let's go to player attacker. I'm going kind of fast in this video, guys. I wanted to make it as condensed as possible. If I'm going too fast, I apologize. You can watch this or slow it down. We're going to say damage collider, right weapon, is equal to weapon slot manager dot right hand damage collider. And we're going to put that right below the character manager variable. And this is on the player attacker where we attempt to backstab or riposte. Then we're going to say int critical damage is equal to, what we want to say is player inventory dot right weapon dot critical damage multiplier times right weapon, and this will be the damage collider we're actually referencing right now, and it'll be current weapon damage. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're saying, why didn't I reference the current or the player inventory right weapon dot base damage? Well, because if you add buffs later on down the line, your damage collider damage will probably be more than the base damage of the weapon. And then we're going to say enemy character manager dot pending critical damage is equal to the critical damage you just assigned. So basically, now they're going to have that value on their character manager right here of the damage that we just assigned from our weapon. And now we actually need to just call this in an animation event. So let's go to the animator manager here. And this is the base class for both. We're going to make a public virtual void, take critical damage. And then we're going to take critical damage animation event. And then we're going to actually override this on both of our animator managers for our player enemy. But first, we're going to rename the player's animator manager because it's called animator handler. And that's just really confusing because we have one called enemy animator manager. We have animator handler. So let's just call this player animator manager. We'll rename it, and this is probably going to mess something up because this is an older version of Unity, so let's just hit apply and save. Don't freak out if you get an error. I'm probably going to get one too. Okay, it might look good actually. Let's just see. Next, let's go to the animator manager, and we're going to open these both up here. Let's minimize everything right here right now. Okay, right down here, I'm just going to put this right above the private void on animator move. We're going to say public override. That's the keyword there for overriding the original. And we're going to use take critical damage animation event. And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to call Oh, no, it's right here. Our player managers. We're going to have to call our player stats, though, because that's where we deal damage. So our player stats, we'll call that here. And then on initialize or on awake, I'm actually not sure why I use initialization method here. I prefer using awake, but that was just, I guess, my coding context back then. Player stats equals get component and parent player stats. And, okay, that looks good. Now down here we can say player stats dot take damage, and then we can just pass the player manager dot pending damage. Cool. And then we do the same thing on the enemy animator manager because we want to be able to backstab both. Oh, and then we can reset the pending damage by saying player manager dot pending critical damage equals 0. In a few videos, guys, I'm going to do a refactor. Nothing will be deleted. We're just going to reorganize the structure of our functions and clean up our naming conventions a little bit. So I'll have a video dedicated to that probably in 2 or 3 videos time. Next, we're going to say enemy stats here, much like we did on the player animator manager. And we're going to say enemy stats get component and parent enemy stats. And then we're going to do the exact same thing we did on the player animator manager. We're going to say public override take critical damage animation event. And then we're just going to basically make the enemy take damage. And we'll just pass the enemy manager dot pending critical damage. And then after it's taken the damage, we'll reset the enemy manager dot pending critical damage to 0. Okay, save. Excellent. Now, let's go to the animation here. Let's highlight the enemy model. And let's look for the get backstab animation. So backstab is what mine's called. And you can see here from my other project, I actually have an animation event already placed. And it was actually called take critical damage as well. This one's called take critical damage animation event. So that's there because I brought the animation over from another project. And cool, that looks good. All right, we still have a couple more things to do. So next we're going to go to enemy stats, and right here we have the is dead bool, and returns true if we're dead. We actually want to make the is dead bool update the animator is dead as well, so we know to transition to the death backstab animation or the get back up backstab animation. So we're gonna have to do that. Let's see here. We can go to the enemy manager. We're just going to put it right here on the update method. So let's go over here to the update method. And then right below is interacting. We're going to say, oh, that's actually in the enemy stats. So we're going to say enemy animation manager dot anim dot set bool is dead. And then we're going to say comma enemy stats dot is dead. And then we do the exact same thing for the player manager as well. So let's go over to that and let's clear out all these code tabs here now so we can make it look a bit more clean. See what we're doing. Okay, player manager. Open that up. Let's go down to update. And I'm just going to put it right here below is there. anim.setBool is dead. And we're going to set that to player stats.isDead. And now we'll have a proper transition, in theory, if we're dead. All right, so okay, so when I started the game, you see you might have these errors too. Look at this. If you go to the player model, it says the script is missing. This is what I was afraid of. We can actually just click this. You should be able to just click it and then look for the player animator manager and then clear these errors and start the game and it should be fine. But we might actually have to save it as a prefab because it might still, yeah, okay, so it's giving us grief right now. It doesn't actually do this in newer versions of Unity. So what we're going to have to do is just get out of play mode here in a second. Basically set it to the player animator manager thing here and then drag the player prefab and replace the prefab that you have saved and then it should be fine. Whoops, I accidentally dragged my comic letters. There we go. Let's drag that here. Now we start the game, it should be fine. Yes it is. Okay, thank you. Excellent. Oh, we can rotate. Right. That's because we have to check off these rotates or can rotate box. Yep, there it is. So check that off and save your prefab again, and you'll be fine. Okay, and now our naming conventions look all nicer. So if we go to the enemy now, and we try to backstab him. Oh, we have a slight problem. So he dies, and he plays death animation. And this is because we're using the take damage function, which actually declares that we play an animation when we're hit, and an animation if we are dead. So what we want to do is make a function similar to that, but make it so we don't play in animation when we take damage. So I'll just show you again here. Watch when we backstab. You probably didn't catch that the last time. If we backstab him, look at that. He just instantly goes to the death animation. So that's an easy fix. You can do this a couple of ways. You can make it so if we're busy, don't play the animation. But what I'm going to do is, for the sake of future videos too, I'm just going to make another function, just like take damage. But I'm going to say public void take damage no animation. And again, it's basically going to be the exact same thing. You can pretty much copy and paste most of the code in here. But we're just going to not include the process of playing an animation. So let's take the int for damage and pass that as well. Let's get rid of this commented text right here and this animator play death. And then we're just going to essentially go to the player and enemy animator managers, and instead of using the take damage functionality, rather, we're going to use the take damage with no animation. So I'm going to copy that on the player stats, or paste that function, sorry, on the player stats as well. So now the player stats and enemy stats have a take damage no animation function. And then let's go to the animator managers here, both the player and enemy. And it's very simple. Right here where we say enemy stats that take damage, just say take damage, no animation. And now, in theory, this should work, and I believe it will. Oh, there we go. And now we have the basis for our riposte ability too, because it'll be handled very similarly, but we actually have to make a parry and such. So if I go behind this enemy here now and I backstab him, yes, there we go, and he should play the death animation, and he does. Excellent, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. We now have a fully functioning backstab system. So we're going to do some more polish on the combat, and we're going to do some reorganization, renaming of our naming conventions and such, and then we're going to move on to parry. So get excited for that. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like. It does something to the algorithm. It appeases the YouTube algorithm gods. And if you're feeling super generous, a comment with a like helps even more. People get to see my series who would not normally see it. And if you're feeling like a total champion, guys, check out my Patreon below. I will see you guys in the next one.